Let's go, Rider Nation.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah, here we go. It's a feeling now. Get 'em high, get 'em low, 'cause we're dealing now. Everybody's giving it all they got, 'cause we're ready.
Welcome to the Piffles podcast, your Saskatchewan Roughriders fan podcast. Thanks again for joining us. You got me. I'm Alex.
I'm Steve.
And I was late.
Yeah, way to go.
I will take a mea culpa on this one. Stupid technology. Usually it's the IT guy that has problems with technology, but today was the guy pushing the buttons.
When you said you were booting up your laptop, I told Alex, I bet you he'll be here by 5 after 8 now. Sure enough, here we are.
Well, ever since I got the new one, I've been fine, but yeah, for some reason they decided that it didn't want to show my handsome face, and we couldn't let that happen. So
No. Need to have that.
Makes the rest of us look better.
Something like that. As good as it could possibly be anyway. Thanks for giving us a listen here on your favorite podcast platform, of course, watching on YouTube and SaskTel Max TV on demand. Piffles podcast, of course, brought to you by Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sask Drive in Regina. You can give us a follow on X at Piffles Pod. I'm at Real Alex D.
You'll find me at Safamod.
and as always, I do not need nor want your pity follows at Greg on Sports.
You know, I know somebody who might give you a pity follow. And funny enough, Greg, we're bringing him onto the show, and I'm excited to do this. Let's get right to it. Bring on our guest here for the opening kickoff. Joining us this week here on the Piffles podcast, Rob Vanstone, senior journalist and rider historian. Rob, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Thanks for having me tonight. Or today, whatever term is operative.
Now, most important question I'm going to get out of the way first, and then I'll let the other guys kind of take over here for a little bit. How is Candy?
She is at home waiting to mob me after I leave work tonight. And I thought about doing it from home so that the world could get another glimpse of her, but she tends to monopolize things. And I was actually trying to get some writing done at home before I came to work today, and she laid down beside my computer, and every time I tried to type, she would start pawing at my hand, and then she started licking my hand, and then she just laid right in front of me and wouldn't allow me to even type. So I was kind of worried about her sabotaging the podcast, because she correctly concludes that she's in charge. So she's so cute.
Probably would have been the best part of the podcast anyway.
Yeah, well, I can't promise much, so I can pull out some dog pictures of my phone and show them to you if that
Perfect.
that
We
saves
love that.
this. So I've only got 10,000 of them. That's not an exaggeration.
You know, actually, I don't think I have any photos of like anything else other than my two dogs, and I'm running out of storage space. And I know I should just transfer them all onto a hard drive, and I can't take them off my phone.
Not-
They just
Always
don't
need to
there.
have them right there.
Yeah, exactly. You never know when I need that picture from like 5 years ago.
I refuse to delete a photo of the dog. Like, even
Yep.
if my thumb's in it, I won't delete a dog photo. So that's my exciting life.
Meanwhile, I'm the cat guy on the podcast. I don't take a single picture of my cat because cats are dumb.
Sure words have never been spoken on this podcast. and now that we've probably ticked off quite a few people, let's move on here. Rob, recently celebrated your 1 year with the Roughriders. How is the first year being my voice of the Riders, the official historian of the Saskatchewan Roughriders?
Aside from I don't even know how much weight I've gained since I got here, but aside from that, it's been wonderful. I still can't really digest it. It's the first anniversary was on February 21st, and it just still seems so beyond comprehension to me. I mean, I just look around here and it's like going to Disneyland every day. I'm not exaggerating, and it might sound kind of goofy, but that's kind of how I look at this. There hasn't been a day since I started here when I haven't walked around and kind of thought, when's security going to escort me out of the building? Because I almost seem like I feel like an intruder sometimes. It is that cool. And I've loved every day of it. And I'm not just saying that because it's the correct thing to say. It's the absolute truth.
What was it like moving from the leader post, where you spent more than 30 years, over to the Riders? And what's the difference like in your career and how you attack a day?
Fundamentally, it doesn't feel different when I'm writing. When I'm doing that, you're interviewing, you're typing, you're researching. That doesn't feel different. That's the one thing I thought I could bring over here where I wouldn't notice a difference. It's a different type of writing, whereas at the LP, obviously there was a greater array of topics, or larger array of topics, I should say, and it was a lot more opinion based. This is more of a storytelling type thing, and the historian label, when that was attached, I just fell in love with that as well. So you can see the dusty files behind me. So I didn't have, even though I did lots of history related pieces at the LP, that wasn't part of the job description. It is here, and it's really been neat to kind of catch up on the team's historical record and find out some really cool things that I keep writing about, and many more that I will write about. So it's just, but the rudiments are the same. It's I'm not. It's a different style. It's a different job, but I still have a MacBook on my lap, and that's what I love to do.
Now, you obviously being the huge Rider fan that you are, growing up being a big Rider fan, covering the team that you love, how do you contrast now being a fan of the team, but now working for them as well?
It feels, I got that question quite a bit, especially when I moved over, and it just, to me, it feels authentic. I mean, I'm being true to I've said several times, I'm being paid to be the 11-year-old version of me. The voice hasn't changed much, but I've got tapes of myself from 1977. My voice is exactly the same. Hair's grayer. But I mean, this, what I grew up loving. It was kind of an entry point into sports for me. This, and going to Rider games with my mom, and going to Pats games with my dad when he was the organist for the Pats from 1971 to 74. So that's what got me into sports, period. And so now, one of the first things I did when I got this job was I pretty much bought out the rest of the 2022-23 Pats season, and then I got a Pats season ticket, and now I just completely obsess about all things Riders, just like I did when I should have been doing homework in 1981. So.
But did 1981 Rob Vanstone expect to be the star of so many Rider commercials?
I think they just need an older demographic to check that box, so they come toward me. And they approach me about these things. That's been a lot of fun. What people don't see are the outtakes. I've had so many people, especially when we did that potato chip one with Brett Lother, and so many people commented on it and thought that I actually, in some cases, some people actually commented and thought I did a decent acting job, but it took me like 14 takes to do thank you. I think I needed a cue card for it. So if the outtakes are ever shown, my cover will be exposed.
See, you say that, but I remember nothing about that commercial other than you reaching up to your shoulder and grabbing a chip and eating, and that kind of stuff sticks out.
Well, you got to have a chip on your shoulder sometimes. Sorry.
There you go. Whether you like it or not, you were the star. You were absolutely the star of that one, and you got a lot of love for that and the watermelon commercial. You just stood out.
Karina Peterson was absolutely sensational in the watermelon commercial. We shot that just across the way here in what is a boardroom that is named after Scott Schultz, and Karina just absolutely nailed her line, basically stopping the word watermelon and just going watermelon. So if there's a Canadian Football League version of the Oscars, I nominate Karina.
Okay,
But also
so
your rolling suitcase was also a star in the schedule release video. I
Yeah,
don't think people realize that thing goes with you everywhere.
that old thing, I bought that when I was writing the book on the 66 Rough Riders. And this was 2000. We went to Mexico, and while I bought this, while this thing was my new black computer bag, Ken Austin resigned as a head coach of the Rough Riders. So this was 07 turning 08. And this was, I had all these files, and I didn't really have them on my desktop. I had them all in file folders. So my wife filled all her carry-on with every form of research I had for this book. And then I bought this old computer bag just so I could fill it with file folders, and went to Tulum, Mexico. And I've been using it ever since. So everything about a historian is old, including the computer bag. 16 years together now. My computer bag is now old enough to drive. It's got wheels, so I guess it doesn't, Sorry.
Over the last year, working with the Riders, what have you learned about yourself?
I've learned that you can always be kind of a kid again, which, I always had that feeling at the leader post. That was a dream job, and I cherished the 36 years I spent there. But, you think that when you're in your late 50s that you really can't renew yourself. Maybe you can. And it was interesting as I approached 60 to get a new job and feel like a rookie. That just kind of changed my whole outlook on things. It's just not a position somebody my age is generally in. So many people, younger than me have retired. So many people think I have retired, but I also learned that I still have the same energy, believe it or not, that I did when I started at the leader post on May 12th, 86. And I still like to put in the endless days and the overnights, and I learned that I can still do it. At the leader post, with the deadlines changing and everything, it had become kind of a 9 to 5 existence. And when I started at the leader post, it was a 9 to 5 existence. It was closer to a 9 to 5 existence if you put a PM after the 9, and we worked all night, and I loved that. And it's kind of neat to know that I can still do that, and I'm still allowed to do it. I still have the energy to do it. I still have the initiative to do it. Sometimes you wonder as you get older if you still have it, and I'll leave that to the public to decide ultimately. If they're not reading, I'm not working, or writing. But it's kind of maybe a bit of a corny answer, but I learned that I still have that desire to learn new things and try something. I didn't think I could ever do it. I never thought I would change jobs. I never thought I could change jobs. So that was a monumental step for me, just to be able to prove to myself that I could do that and take that initiative and dive into something new, and leave something I absolutely loved. I never thought I could do that. I guess I did. And I'm, leader post is in terrific hands now, and they've got a fresh voice and a fresh face, and Taylor Shire is terrific, and I'm glad the leader post has Taylor there. I think it was a great move for Taylor and a great move for me.
Well, if you're going to be writing as long as people are reading, I think you've got a long career with the Riders ahead of you, because everything you put out is fun. The one thing I like is you're really known for having, I want to call them quirky facts, but random facts that most people wouldn't even think to look into. And you just seem to have them at the tip of your tongue. So I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here.
Uh-oh.
See if you can throw us just a random fact about the team coming up this year, about somebody that we may not know, or their connection to the Riders. For instance, you had the DB who had the same name as a guy who played here before, and that led to a long article about guys like that. But is there anything new coming up that quirky fun fact we don't know?
Well, I think I'm just trying to think. There's so many things that kind of forms a bottleneck when you're trying to cite just one. we just re-signed, the Herdman Reed brothers, and I didn't know until recently that their father was James Reed, who used to play for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and actually played 3 games for the Roughriders in 1985. I didn't know that. And so the Herdman Reed twins are back. And I also learned that they're the second set of twins in Rider history. I'd always wondered how long that lineage went as far as twins. And the first were the Boyko brothers, Bruce and Alan Boyko, born March 2nd, 1967. So they got a birthday coming up, and they were the first set of twins. So, but I didn't know that Reed and Herdman Reed was James Reed. I thought that was really cool. I just stumbled into that not so long ago.
Okay, Steve and I were actually talking about this before we started the show here. Talked about Herdman Reed brothers. I know they're not twins, but Rock and Roll Preston. Do you have any great facts about Rock and Roll Preston?
I was so pumped when they signed Rock Preston, because I remember I think the first day I had NFL Sunday Ticket, or one of the first days in '98, it was a joyous day when we first got NFL Sunday Ticket. And Roll Preston took a kickoff return all the way for the Green Bay Packers. And then 3 years later, he's a rider. And I'm thinking, my goodness, is this going to be something? And then I think in Winnipeg one night, he caught a 78-yard touchdown pass. And I thought, this is going to be terrific. And the rock and roll experiment lasted 1 year. It's funny how much of a deal was made of that, and what kind of potential that rock and roll nickname and that moniker had. And but it just really never got off the ground, sort of like that 2001 team. They had the nice start at 2-1 and then just could never put it together. And but it's funny, because I was doing a piece on brothers, and for Family Day I did a piece on Rough Riders families' ties through the years. And I don't know why, I was coming up with all these obscure families from 1913. And then just as I was about to file it, I thought, the Prestons. I forgot the Prestons. I was going through the list and I saw Ken Preston, and Rich Preston was the water boy. And then I thought, how could I forget the Prestons? So they were the last addition to that column. And not really that proud of that. That should have been an automatic, especially since it's near the front of the lineup today.
In fairness, Rob, you've probably forgotten more about the Riders than any of us will know in our entire lifetime. It's amazing the things you can come up with just on the spot like that. That's fantastic.
Well, I laugh about it, and people talk to me about that, and I said, yeah, but if you ask me where I put my keys, I don't know. If you ask me to do anything that is evidence of practical life skills, nope. I once asked my wife where the mail was, and she said it's in the pantry. And I said, what's a pantry? I didn't know what a pantry was, and I was in my 40s. So yeah, it's
it's like a disk drive with too much information in it. I can't take any more on.
No, it's just absolutely bursting. There's nothing that I do that really has any semblance of a purpose except doing this. I absolutely love doing this, and I'm so useless as virtually everything else. I can effectively take the dog for a walk and find my way back to the house, because she's got a good scent and she knows where we're going. So.
Obviously you've been covering the Riders for a while, and you've done some great interviews, and I know you've been very glowing about players like Trevor Harris and Jake Winicky, but we're here for the hot goss. Who's the most contentious interview you've ever had with the Riders? I have an idea who it is.
You mean ever? Not since I got here, obviously.
Yeah, ever. Yeah, your entire history.
You know what? I don't know who it was to this day, but it was the 99 season, and the team was off to a bad start, and I wrote that. And I was interviewing Kennedy Nikiasen for a Rider program feature, and I had my back to all the players in the locker room. And the whole time I'm doing this interview, they're catcalling me and heckling me and telling, Kennedy to watch out for the story being twisted or whatever. And there's just howling in the background. And I just tried to ignore it and did the interview. And since, quarter century now, I've been wondering, who were those guys? I don't know what position group they were. I never did actually see them doing it, but it was the most contentious situation I was ever in because it was just very distracting. I was just trying to do my job and do a feature on a, player who came through the Regina football system and the Tom Trojans. And yet there was all that noise in the background. And I've always kind of wondered, well, yeah, okay. Who was that? I just finished the interview and left. And there really wasn't much purpose in sticking around. So that was the most difficult situation I've been in, just because it wasn't easy to do the interview because there was so much noise in the background. But I found even if there were things that people wrote that they disagreed with, or I think you could always resolve it by being there. That was always the key. If you wrote something negative about somebody or something they didn't like, you better be at practice the next day. You better be in the locker room the next day. You better be there to take it. And what I do sometimes is request them. And I remember one time when Marcel Belfait was the offensive coordinator, I had written something that was rather critical, if I recall correctly. And then the next day I just requested Marcel. And okay, here I am. If there's anything you want to say, here's an opportunity. And that it addresses it and also prevents it from festering. And I didn't really have many disputes over those years which is something when you consider all the years I did it in that environment.
So you don't have a good story like Jamie Nye and Diamond Ferry eating a sandwich. Still one of my favorite ones.
That was a classic. And I always found that you could generally resolve it. Like, Kent and Keith and I had some disagreements over the years, and I always thought he was a fabulous talent, and I've never seen a more exciting running back with the Roughriders. And things can tend to settle over time. I DM'd Kenton a couple of times for some stories I was working on. I did one with the LP during the pandemic when there's nothing current to write about. I did something on who's the fastest Rough Rider of all time. And so I wondered, I wonder what Kent and Keith did the 40 in. And as it turns out, so I DM'd him, and it was something like 4.28 or whatever. It was ridiculous. And so I'm glad that time has kind of dealt with those situations, and that it can be amicable now. People can get caught up in the heat of the moment, and it's an emotional game. And I remember how I used to be when I played touch football. I wouldn't have liked somebody sitting there criticizing me after my 2-yard out pattern on 3rd and 18 either. So
you were watching Marcel Belfait.
I'm sorry.
So you were watching Marcel Belfait.
His first game as the offensive coordinator, the team got something like 38 first downs. It was just unbelievable. No, his first game of his last year as the offensive coordinator, when there was so much discussion about the offense. It was that opener against Winnipeg when Corey Holmes took the opening kickoff back, and the first downs total was just ridiculous. I'm going to try and find it because now I'm curious. Winnipeg 42-15 victory stats. Sorry. Oh no, I lied. 30 first downs. Winnipeg had 9. Riders had 30 first downs. Oh no, it was a yardage total. No, it wasn't that either. 434 yards of total offense. Well, there was something about that resonated with me. It must have been the 30 first downs because it seemed to be such a contrast to what some people's memories are of that season. And I think Marcel did a pretty good job when you consider what he had to work with at the time.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about getting to know the players a little bit. You do that probably more personal now working for the team. How tough is it? You wrote about Cooper Richardson, who was an offensive tackle last year and at the end of 2022. How tough is it you learn about a guy, the person, not just the football player. You learn about the person. Everybody likes him, like you wrote. And then just like that, he's gone. He's cut.
That was really tough. And it doesn't get easier. There's been a few situations like that. It's just, that's the nature of the business, and they sign up for it. And sometimes it probably doesn't even surprise them. Players have been in a lot of places sometimes before they come to the Canadian Football League. But the Cooper Richardson thing, we had talked like a day or two before, because he was from Folsom, California, and I wanted to do a feature on, you know, him and the connection to Johnny Cash and Folsom Prison, the whole Folsom Prison Blues, I think the song was. And he told me like there were tour groups and everything back home, so we were going to sit down and do a story on that, and it would have been such a cool one to do. You know, the solace in situations like this is, I think the guys you get to know very well are generally the people. I think everybody kind of gravitates towards the people who, you know, who are welcoming and nice. And I think that's going to serve Cooper and serve everybody well, you know, for the rest of their life, which is, you know, not even nearly half over when they're finished playing football. So, you know, you feel badly at the time. You think, okay, I won't be able to actually, you know, speak with that person again in all likelihood, but you know, they're going on to be a huge success in life because, you know, somebody like Jake Winicki. Yeah. I mean, football was a great vehicle for him, but, you know, Jake Winicki is just an extraordinary person. Derek Moncrief, etc. You know, I really liked Darrell Walker. You know, we spent a few hours hanging out at training camp one day. I just really liked him. And so those are tough, but you know, with each change, you get to meet somebody new. And that's also interesting because that's a new story to tell. And everybody's been so nice since I got here. It's that makes it easier to take as well.
Going from the leader post to being inside the fold, they're two different jobs. Do you ever miss being the journalist as opposed to the historian?
No, not really. I mean, the only thing I really missed every Christmas I used to do this mock interview with Santa Claus, and it was extremely goofy, and there were a lot of targets, and you know, not a lot of the time it wasn't really that Rough Rider oriented. You know, politicians and just celebrities. It was just this opportunity every year to just write about anything I wanted, and not necessarily within the sports realm. And so Christmas started approaching last year, and I kind of got the itch to go shopping. I used to go walking around department stores and malls looking for little items that are on sale that would tweak me. And it's like, oh yeah, this would be good for Donald Trump, right? And so I got the itch to go on that shopping spree, and then it's like, well, I don't have the Santa Claus column anymore. So that was the only real pang that I had. I think I'd reconciled myself when I left that, okay, you know, that is part of something you did, and I did my best at it, and I hope people enjoyed it. But it was 38 years of it, and I was starting to use some lines 2 or 3 times over, and so it was, you know, I just felt like it was time, and I was comfortable with that, and I really didn't have any regrets. It's you know, it's because this is the only job I ever would have left that for. I mean, and who would have imagined even a week before I took this job, I never imagined that it would ever exist. So it took a real special circumstance for that to happen. You know, I miss the people, but Murray Mandrick and I still take our dogs for walks every weekend. So, you know, you still keep in touch with a lot of the people, and you know, I miss the newsroom vibe that existed long ago, but we were working remotely anyway. And I suppose that made it a little easier to take because I didn't have to physically say goodbye to a lot of people. I just kind of cleaned out a desk in an empty newsroom and put a bunch of stuff in a box and left. And it would have been tougher had I been severing some of the ties that existed, you know, or ending some of the circumstances that existed 5 or 10 years ago when we were still in that newsroom that I absolutely love. But there were just so many signs telling me that this was the right thing to do. And I haven't had an ounce of regret since, except for Santa, and I got to lose some weight again.
Now, you've spent a long time in journalism, whether it's with the Leader Post or with the Riders now. If you could give an up-and-coming journalist one piece of advice, if this is something they wanted to do with their life, what would it be?
If it's what you want to do with your life, ignore everything that people might say about why you shouldn't do this. We've all seen and heard about the media cutbacks, and you hear about the disparagement of the media and all of that. And there's always been some form of adversity to face, but it just seems now across the breadth of the media, it's a difficult time. But if it's something you want to do, just immerse yourself in it and pour everything you can into doing it. That's what I did back in '86. I wanted that job at the Leader Post more than anything, and every keystroke was devoted to trying to make that a reality. And people said, well, you're kind of limiting your odds. It's not only do you want to do this for a living, but you want to do it at this paper and then in a corner of the paper. And it's like, okay, yeah, there's not many of those jobs, but nobody wants it more than me. And you can always outwork somebody. I've never pretended to be the most talented writer or the most, gifted or enterprising reporter, but I've always loved it, and I've always cared, and I've always worked hard. And I think if you have those attributes, in a way, although the traditional media is facing its issues, everybody has a voice now, and there's never been a wider forum for people's work to be seen or heard or read. And so, if you can use technology as it exists to your advantage, people will find it if it's good. And sometimes all it takes is a retweet or a re-X or whatever it's called now. So, I've seen what's happened in the journalism school, and I'm glad that it is back at the University of Regina. And I know they've had issues with the number of people registering, and that was always alarming, because I always, you always hope that there was that next wave of journalists coming up. And, that renewed my hope that to see the program coming back with a bit of a different description. And I hope they've got 120 applicants a year like they did when I applied, because it's a wonderfully fun thing to do.
Yeah, as a former wannabe journalism student / be more Rob, less Greg.
Well,
That's just good advice in general.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I was a fifth person on a waiting list of 5 in 1985. They let 35 people in, 25 people in at a waiting list of 5, and I was number 5 on the waiting list. And 5 people dropped out between being accepted in the spring and the start of classes in September of '85. So her name was Lisa. Lisa was the last person to drop out, and I got that call in like late summer of '85. That's how fluky it was.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah,
We'll send her a fruit basket.
forever in debt. I've never met her, but I'd love to say thank you if I ever get the opportunity.
Well, big surprise for you. Guess it. No, we didn't find it. Don't worry.
This is your life.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Lisa just comes walking into the screen.
Obviously, writing. You have a new book, Brave Face, about maskless goalies. I heard you got a great shout out from Chico Resch, who is an absolute beauty, great storyteller. Tell us about your book.
Yeah, thank you. It was kind of a product of the pandemic. I mentioned earlier when I did the story on the fastest Roughriders of all time, the Kent and Keith tribute, and my goodness, was he an exciting runner. And the more things I dig up going through the years he played, it's just like I'm doing a list of all-time rider touchdowns of 50 yards or more, and it's just like Kent and Keith. Like it's stunning what he did. Anyway, what was the question?
Chico Resch.
How did I get on that tangent? So it was during the pandemic, and I was coming up with little projects like that. And our editors at the Leader Post, Heather Pearson at the time and Tim Switzer, they were encouraging us, being in sports with no sports going on. If there's anything you've ever wanted to do, anything you ever wanted to write, now's your opportunity. Do it. And so I suggested maskless goalies for just a weekender takeout in the Leader Post, because I've always been fascinated by it. When I started watching hockey in the early 70s, I was just taken by goalie masks. And then I couldn't believe that there were goalies who didn't wear them. At the time, there was 2. There was Gump Worsley and Joe Daly. And even though the number of maskless goalies had been gradually reducing through the 60s and into the early 70s. Suddenly it increased. It went from 2 to 3 when Andy Brown was called up from the Fort Worth Wings by the Detroit Red Wings. I just couldn't, there's another maskless goalie. What are these people doing? Have they heard of Bobby Hull? And I was just really fascinated by it at a very young age. So I started digging into the research for this very self-indulgent weekender and this 2,000 word feature that I was doing. And within a week, I talked to Glenn Hall. I talked to Jerry Cheevers, who was amazing. I talked to Bernie Perron, and I just thought there's more to this than just a newspaper article can accommodate. So I contacted the amazing people at Triumph Books in Chicago, with whom I did the 100 Things Rough Riders fans should know and do before they die. That was right before I last appeared with you, and they said, yeah, absolutely, they've been great. So it's really kind of, and then I ended up being a employee of a football team. So I think I've got to be the only employee of a football team ever to release a hockey book. Like, it's a really been a cool thing to do, and it's Triumph Books website. It can be found there or on Amazon. I think there's some copies at Indigo. I'm working on a appearance in Saskatoon during training camp at McNally Robinson. That'll be fun. And I'm at the Regina Beach Public Library on March 17th. So that's what's coming up.
Now, there's a documentary coming out on Andrew Harris. I know people here in Saskatchewan not going to love that whatsoever, called Running Back Relentless. It's going to get a VIP premiere in Winnipeg. And when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is a perfect question for Rob. Besides Joey Walters, okay, you can't pick Joey Walters. Who would you like to see, past or present? I knew you'd have that photo up there. What rider, past or present, would you like to see a documentary about?
Oh my goodness. There's Vernon Vaughn. I know this sounds obscure, but in the late 50s, early 60s, they had a receiver named Vernon Vaughn. And apparently he was just a tremendously nice person. And he ended up getting cancer, and he died. And he was buried in his Rough Rider sweater. And it's funny, you mentioned Chico Resch earlier, but Chico used to go to rider practice and ask players for chin straps. And like the kids did back then after practice, and after games, he'd run onto the field and ask for chin straps. And one of the players he became close to was Vernon Vaughn. He was a huge Vernon Vaughn fan. And, I've got that in the back of my mind as a story I would really like to do, but I think it would be a really, compelling story about this amazing athlete and this very popular person whose life was cut short so prematurely. And it was such a sad story, but anything I've ever read or heard about Vernon Vaughn, things that Chico has told me, or that people who saw him play have told me, he was just one of the nicest guys ever. Somebody who came here for the United States, wasn't here for that long, but just loved it so much that he was buried in his Rough Rider jersey. I think there'd be a really compelling story to tell there, regardless of whether it's with the written word or with a documentary.
Well, you get Chico Resch involved, I'm there. There's no better storyteller out there than Chico Resch.
Oh, Chico is amazing. He was kind enough to write the foreword for Brave Face, and he also proofread it for me. And it's still hard to believe. I was going through my old autograph collection at home the other night, and I'm flipping through all these old hockey cards that I used to send away to get signed in the 1980s. And there I found like Chico Resch, New Jersey Devils, Chico Resch, Colorado Rockies when they weren't a baseball team, and all these Chico Resch autographs I wrote for when I was 16 years old, and now he's doing a forward for my book. Funny life, isn't it?
Well, 35th year anniversary for the 1989 Grey Cup team. Somebody asked us to ask you about this coming up here this year. Any plans in the mind of Rob Vanstone for what he wants to do for potential stories for a 35th anniversary of 1989?
Oh, there's so many. That 89 team it's hard to believe, pretty much everyone's in their late 50s or early 60s now. And I remember when you think back to 2006 when there was the 40-year reunion for the 66 team. You think, wow, 40 years. But that 89 team still seemed pretty fresh in our minds back then. And now it's starting to push that milestone that we all celebrated in 2006 with the 40-year team. And it's hard to wrap my mind around that. I really haven't thought about it that much because it still seems like it's about 3 days ago to me. It's the most incredible championship game ever played in any sport. And just the story of that entire team is amazing. So, I definitely will do something, but I haven't really thought too much about what. I'd be interested in, a lot of those guys are around my age now, and a lot of them, I found it was interesting because when I did the 66 book, a lot of the players were retired and had a lot of time to be, sit around and do interviews. But when I did the 89 book in 2009, most of those guys were in their 40s and they were busy working. They were busy raising families. They didn't have 2 hours to sit on the phone and talk to me about something that happened 40 years ago. So what excites me as I think about it and think out loud is that I think a lot of these players will have more time to reminisce than they did when they were busy. Like Ken Moore, starting left tackle on the 89 Roughriders, became a doctor, became so successful. And I was really grateful for any time that Ken Moore was able to spend with me, 15 years ago, or, about 15 years ago now when I was working on that book. And I'm hoping I'd like to be able to tell some fresh stories, even though time has passed, because I think now might be a little more time to speak to some of those players, because they were busy with lives. And I was, it just wasn't really that practical for them to give me the amount of time that the 66 players gave me. And so maybe that time is arriving now, and maybe there's a different light that I can shed on that team, even though I wrote an entire book about it. If there's something good, really, really good, I probably should have had it in the book.
All I know is if and when we honor that 89 team, I hope the team shows up to play, because I still have PTSD from that 66 honor game against the Stamps. That was not good.
Yeah, that was
bad that loss was.
No, that was a tough day, but what sticks with me is just the opportunity to spend that weekend, with some of those guys. And Ron Lancaster ended up being rehired as the Hamilton Tiger Cats head coach while that reunion was on. He had to leave over the course of that weekend to go back to Hamilton. But before he did, he delivered was probably one of my, I'm not sure I've ever heard a better quote. And he uttered that in a scrum on the Thursday or the Friday before that game against Calgary. And he said, they say there's all sorts of seasons in Saskatchewan. The wind blows in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, and Lancaster blows playoff games in the fall. It's such a great line. I love Ronnie.
Well, whatever you have coming out for that and everything else you have, I look forward to reading. Rob, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I know we want to get you back home. You got family you want to go see. So thanks for taking time out of your day to join us here on the Piffles podcast. We always appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for making the time and for listening to my rambling answers. And it's been great to chat with you. And anytime you'd like to follow up, just let me know. It's always a pleasure to do this. And I hope you get lots of pity follows out of this, Greg.
Hey,
more than you could ever desire.
Next time we're talking Stampede Wrestling. We just do not have the time for it right now.
Well, Dan Crawford will always be one of my sporting heroes. And you guys are too young to remember Dan Crawford from Stampede Wrestling. But my goodness, I just, there was growing up, there was Ronnie and there was George, there was Ed Stanowski, there was Dennis Sobchuk, and Dan Crawford was in that, a candidate for that Mount Rushmore of heroes growing up. What a tremendous wrestler and a tremendous guy he was. I bet you didn't expect me to mention him. So
I did. I knew exactly what minute I brought up Stampede. We're talking Dan Crawford. Dan
Crawford for sure. There's not nearly enough on YouTube with that. There's only one Dan Crawford match on YouTube, and he loses to Archie the Stomper goalie. I've been looking for, like, ever since I discovered YouTube, for a match that, like, you can find a match where that Iron Mike Sharp wins on YouTube, but you can't find a Dan Crawford victory match. And it really bothers me. So I think you know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of this day.
Thanks so much, Rob. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rob.
Riders senior journalist and rider historian Rob Vanstone here. That's the opening kickoff presented by Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty. Let's jump here to our Churchill Brewing Company odds and end zones. A little bit of rider stuff to talk about. Couple signings that just happened on Tuesday here. 2 signings. One is a receiver, Daz Newsome. I remember this guy actually from the Chicago Bears. I have probably because I'm a degenerate fantasy football player, that's what I remember his name from. Oh, he had like 76 yards in a couple games. Okay, maybe you keep an eye on him for waiver wire. Anyway, I've heard of that guy. Punt returner is his main specialty. Short guy. I think he's like 5'9". So he'll be in the competition there to make the team. And linebacker Diego Fagot is joining the team from. I actually watched this guy play for Navy in the States, and every once in a while I'll put on like the Army and Navy game when it's the only football game on TV at the time. And for some reason, he just stood out to me. Like, he was making plays left and right, and I don't know, maybe there's potential for him to play outside linebacker, even though we have that kind of penciled in for Eau Claire right now. Maybe back up middle linebacker behind Jameer Thurman. But he also rushed the passer quite a bit. So maybe there's a chance he could, he played the outside linebacker in the States, that you come up to the CFL, maybe you play rush end.
Definitely some depth signings. Everything I've seen about these guys, I'm curious to see what they can do in camp. Nothing. It never hurts to bring some guys in and see what shakes out. So, I do know Fagot's name. If I was a play-by-play announcer or a PA announcer, that would scare me reading it without a phonetic spelling on it. Because I was like, what?
And I think it was Matt Young of CTV that put out the phonetic spelling. So,
and I did what everybody does, or what I assume everybody does, but probably doesn't. I went looking for YouTube clips and highlight reels. Dude's a hard hitter. Yeah, I hope we do get to see him line up more on the line than at linebacker. I'd love to see him opposite Malik Carney. I think them with Micah and Lanier in the middle, they could wreak some havoc.
Open spot there on the defensive line, and I think we've talked about it. Probably be a bit of a rotation, but there's definitely. If the team's going to carry 7 or 8 D line every single game on the roster, there's definitely a couple spots open. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe he'll throw him in the defensive end and he'll make the team like that. A connection to the Riders, Craig Dickinson, former head coach, going to Calgary as a consultant. And if he has anything to do with more than being a consultant, I think that's a great thing for 8 other teams in the CFL. Great person.
Their bowling scores are going to get so much better.
I would, honestly, I would be okay if he was in charge of game management, time and all that. He can do that during the game. I hope the Stampeders do that. Give him an elevated role on game day.
Motivational speaker for sure.
The spotter for challenges. But then again, Dave's actually not that good at challenges either. So
no.
I'm curious with him being hired as a consultant, does he count against the coach's salary cap, or is that a way to get around that?
It's a slight way to get around it. I was reading about this, and it doesn't count because you can only have 11 coaches on staff. The consultants don't count, but their salary counts towards the cap. So, but for Craig, though, this is essentially, it's kind of like a part-time role, and especially in the off season. And that was one of the things here. That was when he took the job as head coach, even as special teams coordinator, they wanted him up here the whole year. he's in Montana all the time, going snowboarding, and he's out there all the time. So this actually allows him to do that and not be the full-time coach in the CFL. So it kind of gives him that balance to do both. So that's, I mean, good for him. We all kind of figured that at some point, Mama Dickinson would say to Dave, "Hey, you better hire Craig." So
Why can't you get your brother a job?
yeah, exactly. So that happened, but I mean, he's a good coach. Just don't let him coach the whole team. A certain group, and a consultant is honestly, that's a really good role for him. So good to see him back, because he's such a good guy that the league needs guys like that in the league. So
Great guy, not a good coach.
okay. Girl math. You guys on the TikToks?
Oh,
I don't do TikTok, okay, but I know of it. My wife sends me TikToks all the time.
do you do Snapface?
No, I don't have that. I barely have Instagram anymore. I sent my first reel, I think, not too long ago. But girl math is a trend on TikTok, and the Riders did a marketing email using girl math. So what girl math is basically a way to justify yourself and your frivolous spending. Oh, I bought $1,000 pair of earrings, but they were on sale for $900, so I made $100. And oh, there's 2 earrings, so it's buy one get one free. So I really only paid $450 per earring. So it's just a way to justify you spending money on something you don't need. So the Riders sent out an email, and I have it here. Proficient in girl math. It's basically free. Big savings, and they want you to buy season tickets in Pill Country is what this is for, with the price of $306. So smart with the 306 in there. Big savings, no influencer code needed. Literally the best excuse for cute matching outfits. Take the stairs, earn the seltzers. So, again, I'm not a big TikTok person. I'm not a big into the trend of girl math, but I know what it is. And I like the idea that the Riders tried to be trendy with this. They're trying to hit on, or capitalize on a new market, trying to get a different demographic of fan into the game, which is exactly what they need to do. I think this just fell flat. And to me, it's not so much about using the girl math and, okay, you can talk about the cute matching outfits. We're all wearing green jerseys. That's kind of what they're aiming at there. So that's what the whole thing there is. My issue is with the take the stairs, earn the seltzers thing. Like, there's enough diet shaming out there in the world right now that they missed the mark on this one. And I think that just made the whole thing fall flat. And I don't like this because of that.
Good idea, bad execution.
Exactly.
This, not to the extreme that the Experience Regina launch was. Good idea, bad execution. But somewhere between no marketing and Experience Regina, we're in the middle somewhere.
I like that that's the scale.
Yeah, well, that come on. Regina made national news, like international news with Experience Regina. So this isn't going to hit that, but judging by, and I was actually busy at work today, so when I finally kind of caught up on what was going on, I was like, what is this girl math thing, and why is everyone freaking out about it?
What shocked me the most when I saw the ad and I saw some of the tweets about it already, I assumed this was some guy in the office trying to jump on a trend and really hitting the mark from a female perspective. But if you look at the the marketing team for the Riders, most of them are women. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that surprised me. This had tone deaf guy written all over it. I like the idea. I like them trying to jump on a trend. But I don't know how this got past. It had to have gotten past multiple layers. I don't know how it got past the first one without it going back to to the table going, hey, maybe let's take the earn the seltzer joke out. It just it didn't hit. And I don't even know if it was trying to get a new market because this only went out to season ticket holders.
And that's the other thing too. Like, they already have my money. I'm not buying more tickets. Am I supposed to forward this off to everybody I know? Like, I get it. That's who's in your database for email addresses, and people who signed up for one game or whatever. Like, that's who you should be marketing to. I was talking with Melissa Fiacco, Pat Fiacco, former mayor of Regina, his daughter, and on X, and she said, "You know what gets people up to games? Winning." And
Winning
I'm like,
cures everything. Winning
that's
cures
the best
everything.
marketing you can do. If you can start winning and make the playoffs consistently again, that's how you're going to get people back in the doors, not cute matching outfits as a tagline. So again, I like the idea of trying to be trendy, trying to go young, but this should be, if they're going to do something like this, that shouldn't just be an email that gets sent out to essentially season ticket holders. That should be a commercial on TV. That should be
This should be a
commercial on
commercial on
radio.
their socials.
Put it on your socials. They can do something like that. Then it gets explained a little bit better. It probably looks optic wise a little bit better.
The joke will hit smoother.
Yeah,
Probably.
like there's more potential if you put together the 30-second, 1-minute commercial, something like that.
Have Rob Vanstone do it.
Yeah.
That would make me laugh.
I
That
wonder
would be
what his
priceless.
role in that commercial would be.
He would be the one earning the seltzers. I could see that. It'd be hilarious.
No, he'd probably be thinking, be like, girl math doesn't exist. Trying to figure out, oh, no, that's not how it works. No, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But we've been really hard on the Riders marketing team for the better part of our existence as a show, to be honest. And I want to give them credit for at least trying new things. And we've said that a few times over the last couple of months, where they're at least trying to change things. They're trying to make things a little different. They're trying to jump on trends. I hope the fallback from this one and all of the negative responses doesn't prevent them from trying again. Because this is what they need to do. They just need to do it better. So kudos for trying.
Yep.
Just maybe
Where's
not
that?
this.
Where's that Simpsons gif of Bart with the cake says, at least you tried, and throws it in the trash? Yeah, insert that.
At least we didn't go with the Homer Simpson. You tried and you failed miserably. The lesson here is never try.
No.
Just try. And it's good they're trying. It's just they need to hit better because it didn't land.
One other rider note over the last week here. In the once a rider department, Henoc Muamba retired. Although I guess we kind of all figured that out since he didn't play last year. But, and this is going to lead me into the next topic, and that's going to finish off the show here, is it felt like it
we're
was
ending on a high?
Yeah, it was. It felt like the announcement of his retirement was trying to sweep under the rug exactly what's going on over in Toronto right now.
At least change the narrative anyway. I don't know
Yeah.
if they're ever going to sweep it under the rug, but they're definitely trying to change the news cycle.
Yeah. So Henoc Muamba retires. They announced that obviously with the Argos. Good for him for, his last game played. He was Grey Cup MVP. He was Canadian of the Grey Cup and won the Grey Cup. So to go out like that, excellent for him and great for the league. He was a wonderful player, great human being,
Great ambassador.
He'll be in with the CFL somewhere, doing the waggle. I'd assume still the CFL's podcast with Donovan Bennett. He'll still be, I'm assuming, still probably be doing that, and he'll be around, especially with their newfound player marketing manager. That's a guy you can have along in there as well too. But that was the first announcement, basically by the Argos after the Chad Kelly news broke last week. The report by TSN's Rick Westhead Chad Kelly is in a lawsuit with a former strength and conditioning coach from the Argos whose contract was not renewed. And she's basically suing Chad Kelly and the Argos for not a lot of money, honestly, but for wrongful termination, or basically because Chad Kelly asked her to go out a few times, multiple times. She said no, and he kept on doing it and kept on doing it. And then there was some other stuff. And she ended up taking this to the team. And it got to John Murphy, assistant GM in Toronto. And he said, basically, this is not the can of worms that needs to be opened right now, which is very on brand.
Very on brand for John Murphy.
Yeah. So it's a bad situation for the Argos and the CFL. Obviously, with Chad Kelly being the new face of the league, being the MOP from last year, 16-2 last year as well, too. Obviously, this is a guy you want to try and market, but now I'm not going to go ahead and say that everything is true. I don't know. The investigation is going to happen. All that stuff's going to come out. But it has to be taken very seriously, and kind of until proven different, you have to believe the victim. Especially when I've seen a lot of comments, she's just looking for a payday. Well, when you see what she's actually suing for, no, she's not looking for a payday. It's very minimal money that's trying to go after, like a year's salary, basically. My issue with the whole thing right now and how it was handled was that it wasn't handled by the team and by the CFL. They just needed to come out and say, we know that there's an investigation going on because it's a matter with the law. We have no further comment on it, but they have to just make that comment. And it has to come from the league itself and the team itself, not sent in an email to Farhan Lalji, to media members. It has to come out directly from the league and directly from the team. So what's your guys' quick take on this?
I mean, the fact that John Murphy's been back in the league for less than half
A cup of coffee,
season, and he's back in another situation is not a good look for him. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because this is alleged that nobody has been, there's no charges. This is a lawsuit, a financial lawsuit. At this
a civil
point,
lawsuit, yeah.
right? So we're not talking about criminal charges, but the fact that he is allegedly saying something like that, who is coming to him about harassment, is just a terrible look for him, for the Argos. And if that's the case, I would be shocked if his time in the CFL continues past the end of that situation.
It's really a sad state of affairs when I'm reading that piece by Rick Westhead and I saw the John Murphy part and I'm like, yep, that actually, everything's on point. That actually ties this whole thing with a bow. So the fact that John Murphy got his second chance and he couldn't get out of his own way shouldn't surprise me, but I don't care if he can find a guy mowing grass in Memphis, Tennessee, who's going to be a good football player. He doesn't deserve to be in the league if this is the way he's going to keep on managing his people and being in a position of power. And I guess I should be careful how I word that, because if you haven't read the article, John Murphy basically just turned a blind eye to it. He did nothing to this therapist or trainer, other than just not doing his job as someone in charge of management. But you got to believe the victim, and if the facts play out in Chad Kelly's facts play out his way. But right now, the Argos trying to bury their head in the sand and not coming out just makes this look really, really bad.
And this is a time coming off of a Grey Cup win followed by a historic season. This is the time where the Argos need to be building in Toronto. They need to be jumping all over this team and pushing the Argo name as much out into the community as they can. And for this story to come out now, it could not have come at a worse time for the team. And for them to stay silent is honestly the worst part. I agree with you. And yes, they did each respond to. I think they both both the team and the league responded to separate media requests. But that's as far as it's gone. There's been no actual statement, no trying to get in front of it, or at least acknowledging this lawsuit's existence. It's a terrible look for the league. And it's a terrible look for a team that really doesn't need the negativity right now. And I hope whatever happens quickly and we can get to the bottom of what actually happened and can, not get past it, but resolve it so that they can continue building, because the league needs a strong Toronto fan base, but they can't just ignore this to try and get there.
And I'm not going to defend the league, but I put less onus on them than I do the Argos themselves. I'm trying to recall a time where the league made a comment about a player for something that wasn't on field. Like they had to comment on Garrett Marino, but I don't recall them saying anything about Justin Cox off the top of my head. And I could be forgetting it. I could have memory hold that entire situation. As the team definitely should be doing something about it. And yes, I would love the league to say we believe in safe workplaces and stuff like that. But I don't fault the league as much as the Argos just basically memory holding this and trying to go, nothing's wrong here. What are you talking about? Don't look at the man behind the curtain. It blows my mind.
With Justin Cox, didn't the league immediately ban him from the league when his stuff came out?
Well, Justin Cox was a bad example. His thing was a little extreme. I was just trying to think of. I don't recall the league immediately putting out a press release about a player's situation of something that wasn't on the field.
Usually it would go to the team first. They would say we're releasing this player or whatever is going on. Then the league would say we're not going to register a contract if a team tries to sign him.
But the league is never the first one in front of something like this unless it's an on-field thing. Usually the team is the one that makes the first step.
Absolutely.
And the fact that the Argos are not even acknowledging it, other than saying we're going to let it play out through not even a direct statement, is just weird. But they did sign Rasheed Bailey, so good for them.
I mean, on the field, that's a decent signing, but who's going to be throwing the ball? We don't know. Will it be Chad Kelly? Will it be Cameron Dukes? We don't.
This is why they can't trade Cameron Dukes.
Yeah,
we hope it's Chad Kelly so that we can get Cameron Dukes next year.
That's what I hope anyway. But Steve, I'm with you. I hope this gets resolved quick, just so that whatever the outcome is and happens. And
they can't go into training camp with this. The league and the Argos cannot let this drag out.
No. So for everybody's
what
sake,
honestly surprises me is that with all the money MLSE has, I'm shocked that they didn't just open up the checkbook and say, let's just deal with this. Let's just pay the lawsuit, shut this down, and let's move on. Because that's not the greatest option, but that is an option for them to try and kind of end this cycle, this news cycle, is just to write the check.
I got to admit though, the one thing I do find comforting is Rick West had a employee at TSN, the broadcaster of the league, who is a division of Bell that owns MLSE, that owns the Argos, that he still had the journalistic integrity and freedom to get this story out there to a big audience.
And when you look at what Rick Westhead has done in the past, he doesn't miss.
No, he usually has his facts locked down before he before he runs with it. So
yeah, so very serious situation for the Argos and the league, and just that's because it's so serious. That's why you have to get out and at least acknowledge it and then say no comment following your statement, and then let due process happen, right? So hopefully it gets resolved as soon as possible, so everybody on both sides can move past, maybe not move on, but move past and keep going from there. So we'll see what happens with that, I guess. But I think for us here on the Piffles podcast, that's going to do it for us this week. One thing I want to talk about next week, guys, I want to get into this Edmonton Elks ownership bid presentation coming from former players. And I have questions about it. We're going to save that for next week.
I have several questions about it.
So maybe we'll bring somebody on to help us. It's a group of former players that want to put in a formal bid for owning the Edmonton Elks. Garrick Jones, who played in the NFL as well, was an Elk player, offensive lineman. Damon Allen, Calvin McCarty, Tad Cornegay's in there, Adam Rita, Nick Lewis. Like, these are some big time names that are part of this presentation that want to own a sports team, a pro sports team. So I like the idea of former players and then that's how they're selling it, kind of bridging that gap between owners and players. And I love the idea of that. How sustainable is it? I don't know. And I think that's where we're going to discuss a little bit next week. So be interesting to see how that all kind of shapes out too. But that's going to do it for us this week here on the Piffles podcast. Of course, the show is brought to you by our great friends at Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sass Drive in Regina. Special thanks, of course, go out to Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty and Churchill Brewing Company for their support making the show possible. Thanks to our guest this week, Rob Vanstone, for taking time out of his night to have some fun, share some stories, and give us some great quirks that only Rob Vanstone can do.
For the record, he has not unfollowed me and pity followed me yet. I am still waiting for him to pull that trick.
There's still time.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on YouTube and SaskTel Max TV on demand. This is Tyler Gilbert with Ghost Behind Your Mind.